Okay.
All right, we're rolling.
Are we sure? This time?
Well,
For sure this time? Okay.
Yes.
All right. Happy Tuesday, everyone.
Hello.
Good to be back with you. We've got a few questions that we'll roll into that came in over the last week or so, and then some hopefully that you'll add today as we get started. So be thinking of those and get them on the Facebook site, and we'll try to answer them as they come up. So as you see, Chief Kruger passed the audition, I guess.
1 week.
One week
edition.
in, and so he's back for another round. And I think last week went pretty well. So,
right.
So here you go. You get to do it again. That's either your reward or your penalty, depending on how you look at it.
I usually hit the 3-shot and then walk off the court because by the end of the game, there's a few bricks. So,
So I'll start off kind of like we always do, talking about where I think the base is. And where kind of maybe the greater national capital region is, and where we're thinking and looking in the direction we might be going in. I, like everybody else, kind of watched events unfold over Memorial Day and the long weekend, which hopefully everybody enjoyed, and took a little bit of time to remember why we have it. So kind of a mixed bag, I would say, across the country and across our region in particular. I'll start with Maryland. The trend in Maryland is still, I think, overall going pretty well.
Yeah.
And the trend here in Prince George's County, I think, is going extremely well.
Right.
Compared to where they were just a couple of weeks ago. So that is actually pretty heartening to see how Maryland has responded. I think we'll have to see, as a few things have opened up, what the impact of that is. But we know Prince George's County kind of kept things closed down until at least June 1st.
Yeah.
Some parts of Maryland opened back up. I'll tell you what's gotten a little bit of my attention is what's going on across the bridge over in Virginia.
Right.
I think they've seen a little bit of a rebound in not a great direction in some areas. Won't speak for the state, and I'm certainly not an expert. But just anecdotally, as we look at the numbers, a little concerned about Virginia more than I am, honestly, about Maryland right now. But you kind of put that all together, along with D.C., and you get a sense for what's going on in the national capital region. And it seems like the trend is a little bit better. Certainly a decrease in hospital bed use, a decrease in ICU usage, a decrease in hospital admissions.
Right.
That we've seen, and I know that's important to Prince George's County as we work through that. So from a kind of big picture data point of view, pretty excited about some of the things and directions we're going. How that applies to the base and how it applies to some of the things that are going on in the base. Still not a lot of change from last week or the week before. I still think that we're generally waiting to see a little bit more of a positive trend, or to get that 14 days of a downward trend under our belt before either the 11th Wing or our mission partners make some decisions on when folks come back to work or how long they keep those folks away. But I will say that based on what's happened in the last last couple of weeks, I think I'm gonna announce that we're gonna dip our toes cautiously back into the water in a couple things. The first one is I've given the okay for outdoor rec to open up, and as soon as we can get that back online, I expect by Friday is what they were shooting for. We'll be able to provide outdoor rec services again. And then the other area where we're gonna crawl back into business is at the barber shop. So I gave Thea, our general manager, the go-ahead over the weekend. I said on Friday we would shoot for Friday. I'm not sure if they might already have leaned a little too far forward on that, but none of these will look the same. None of these. As we open things back up on the base, it will not look like it did back in February. So for the barbershop, I asked for a detailed plan from Thea on how we would do that. So we're going to start with just active duty only, and that's not to put our retiree community at disadvantage. It's just a way to start with a small population of folks, to be to be very honest. So we're going to start active duty only. It's going to be appointments. And AAFES will advertise that as the week goes on as to how they're going to do that. It will be limited as to who's in there, so it'll be every other chair. Expect no more than 3 folks at a time, and they will have to sterilize and clean after each appointment, and then they will, both the person getting the haircut and the barber will have appropriate PPE on. There's a little bit of trick to that because at some point we know folks are going to take their mask off to trim around the ears, but we're gonna see how that goes and how we can roll it out and make sure it's meeting the standards that we want as far as making sure that we're protecting the force. But I think we're at a point where we can again just very, very slowly start to put our toes back into the water on some of those things. So looking forward to that. But again, as anything opens up that's been closed across the base, it is going to look much, much different than it did in February. So folks just need to understand that. And then I've had a couple questions again or kind of comments over the last week, kind of addressing the perceived perhaps disparity between our active duty and our retiree community. We still have the hours in place at the commissary. Obviously, when we go back to open the barbershop up, we'll start with active duty only. And I would still, I just want to reiterate that we're trying to balance a whole bunch of things. We're trying to balance risk to force, risk to mission, risk to our families, risk to our retirees. Yeah. So it all kind of filters in there together. So while it might seem that it's it hurts one population or it gives an advantage to another population, that's not the intent at all.
Not at all.
I still go back to the commissary, and we're looking at the commissary continuously. But the idea behind the commissary hours was separate out some populations. And what was really important to me was every day of the week our retirees can come on the base and use the commissary. They can't use it the first 2 hours, but that lets me gives my active duty folks a chance to get in and their families and get in and get out and go back to either work or to teleworking from home. And I think that reduces the risk to that active duty population overall, which is that's my big job here, right? Is to make sure that
exposure
we can prosecute the mission.
Yeah.
But then the other 7 hours of the day, we open up the aperture every day of the week that they're open to make sure that the community we serve has the opportunity to do that. A lot of installations have tackled that a lot of different ways. It's been important to us to keep that, to keep that open every day that we can for our retiree population. So that's kind of where we're at. So maybe a little bit of change for us, but I also have to, I have to kind of prepare the base population and the community that uses the base. There is a better than even chance that we end up walking some of these things back over time. And so, we'll start with 2 activities. I see, personally, I see very little risk from those with the mitigation measures we put in place. But if we see a trend in a wrong direction, we might have to walk backwards.
That's right.
And slow some of these things down. So it's pretty, it's a start. It's a start, but we have to do it safely and smartly and not be too out in front. But I think it's a good place to start. And then we'll see in a couple of weeks how those things go, and if we can open the aperture, on the population at the barbershop or some of the other activities on base, then we'll get to that point. So a little bit of, depending on how you take it, a little bit of good news maybe for the services on the base.
I think it's very good news, and I think it's from what we can see, the right level of risk versus reward.
Yep.
Right. So to keep our civilian population, our retired population safe while you test the waters on opening that aperture, like you said. Yeah.
Yep.
I like it.
Absolutely. Okay, Chief, what were some of the questions?
Well, these are left over from last week. We haven't, know what? I'm going to go right here.
Good. I hope I got answers for them.
Yeah. Can you allow a day for retirees? I am a disabled I am disabled, and the line was near the movie theater and can't stand very long, and he lives on base.
Okay.
So maybe we have to look at how to adapt to that.
So, yeah, we've covered this a little bit. And so, again, there's 7 hours a day at the commissary.
Right.
I know there's populations that have a little more of a challenge to get in there.
Yeah.
So I'm going to go back to the community on that. And, without knowing a name exactly or exact situation, but this is where we need the community to kind of help. So if we've got somebody, especially on base, that's having struggles getting to the commissary to get food, I need the neighbors to kind of rally around that.
Yeah, that's a good point.
If you've got a active duty neighbor that can get in from 9 to 11, that's great. If not, Kelly and I moved over to the TLF. We're out of the house, so we sit back there and we've been watching commissary traffic.
Right.
And I tell you, in my mind, the worst time to go is probably about 10 because you're going to end up waiting in line. Yeah. And I will tell you that toward the end of the day, at least the few days we've been out there, as you get toward 4, 5, and 6, I don't see anybody in line. And there's not a huge stocking issue that I'm aware of, not like we had a couple of months ago. So I would encourage folks to maybe change up their pattern a little bit and take advantage of the hours that the commissary has. And it's I appreciate each kind of situation is a little different. We got a letter from an off-base member. It took a long time to get to us, but he's retired, disabled, blind, and relies on a caregiver to get over to the commissary, which I can certainly appreciate. Well, DECA has the policy in place where they're checking IDs for everybody that goes in, and the caregiver didn't have an ID. Right. Those are certainly situations that we can fix and address, but we kind of have to. Those are kind of one-off things that we have to work through. And we address them with the commissary, and considering how many customers the commissary serves a day, they'll tell you about 1,200. The fact that they've been able to accommodate and flex the way they have, I think we're in a pretty good spot. Not perfect, but it's not perfect anywhere right now. I would offer that. And as things open back up off base, I understand people want to take advantage of the benefit they've earned at the commissary, and totally understand that. But I do think it's getting a little easier to shop off base than it has been. If you're able to, and it's not a significant cost difference, I would encourage folks to look at some alternatives too.
Yeah, that's a great point. That with that particular instance, I talked to MSG, and they took care of it. I mean, they talked, they made accommodations, and I think they reached out, and we definitely have an urge to take care of people the best of our ability. So we're looking up. I have a question from last week. Will there be transitioning from HPCON Bravo anytime soon? If we do, you've already addressed it, the changes we'd see. But
so it's so last week the Secretary of Defense sent out guidance that delegates changes in HPCON back down to the installation commander. So if you rewind the tape, we started off kind of doing our own thing. Secretary of Defense leveled the playing field across all DoD installations and made it HPCON Charlie. And then last week, a little bit of guidance that put that back down to our level. One of the things that was included in that is the need for an installation like ours to be aligned with everyone. They use the term commuting area. Right. So for the National Capital Region, that's a lot of installations.
Yes.
And so as we look, forward to go and potentially to HPCON Bravo, we have a requirement now to be aligned with everybody else in the NCR. And so quite honestly, I don't foresee that happening too quickly. Right. And I took the guidance to include the Pentagon, and I don't see an installation like the Pentagon interested in changing their posture soon. I might be off on that. So if I'm going to stay aligned with everybody else in the NCR,
you have to.
There's a little bit of work to do. The other piece of guidance on there was I'm free to go in the more restrictive direction, but if I'm going to go to Bravo, I have to ask the next person in my chain of command. So I sort of got authorities back at the installation. But we're going to have to work that, and quite honestly, I need AFDW. AFDW is going to help us level that across the National Capital Region.
To get the community
which
there.
we didn't have, and that's on me.
Yeah.
When we started down this road, I was making the best decisions for this installation, and quite honestly wasn't too concerned about some of the others in the NCR. Maybe in hindsight that wasn't the best thing to do because it sent some conflicting messages, but as we come out of it, I think you'll see a more standardized approach. As to what the HPCONs affect, I can tell you in my mind, and there's some disagreement on this, there's not an exact correlation to Charlie and to Bravo and to Alpha and to what is actually available and open on the base.
Right.
I think it really depends on the nature of the pandemic. We know what we're fighting through COVID right now, so it drives us to do certain things that for another issue you might not take some of those actions on the base. So I don't know that the two are related, to be honest. So back to kind of what you said, Chief, it's about risk reward. What makes sense to have available in Charlie? What does not, and do we hold off on some of those things until we go back to Bravo? I'll be honestly, there's a scenario where I see Charlie last until the end of the year.
Yeah.
To be honest, given the nature of this.
Yeah.
So I don't know that we will keep all these things closed that we have, even if we're still in Charlie going forward.
It's all about leveling out that bell curve, right?
Yep.
And if we are, then you open things up, and when we don't, we bring it back down to find that balance.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's good.
Yeah, a few more parties at Lake of the Ozarks, and we're not going to have any downward curve to worry about. Did you see that story?
No, I didn't.
Yeah, it wasn't great.
No.
Wasn't great.
I kind of want to look it up right now.
Yeah.
I'll Google it like I do at my house.
Yeah.
I know the answer to this because it came out late in the week and there was a mass thing, but to those Facebook viewers that haven't seen it, I'll ask you the question.
Okay.
Any new guidance with PT testing?
Yes.
What would that be, sir?
In wonderful fashion, the Air Force released the guidance. Well, I'll be honest, I read about it on Facebook before I ever got it officially. And so...
you guys are fast out there.
Yeah, about Thursday afternoon, it started to make the rounds. The letter from Lieutenant General Kelly, the A1 of the Air Force,
Right.
About what PT testing would be. I think the 89th got it through AMC channels at around 11 o'clock Thursday night, and I got it in my inbox about 8 o'clock Friday morning. So by then, it was pretty well worldwide.
Yep.
That doesn't mean everybody knew, but the general approach is that PT testing, fitness assessment testing, was postponed, canceled until October 1st. And there's some caveats even in that. So they did give local commanders the discretion to start that earlier or to start that later based on local conditions. I will tell you that the 11th Wing, I can't necessarily dictate to the mission partners, although we do operate the fitness assessment cell. The 11th Wing will not conduct fitness testing except by exception until October 1st. So if we had an airman out there that was going to deploy and wanted to test on September 20th, or there's scenarios out there where we might do testing. But generally, October 1st is the first time we'll see testing back here. There was another caveat, which I thought was interesting in there, that said even when they resume testing, you have a 42-day reacclimation, whatever the term is.
Yeah, once it triggers, then you can start training.
Right.
Yeah.
So there was a table included in the guidance, and I sent the guidance out to all the commanders, so it should be trickling down. There's a table that says, okay, if you were satisfactory and excellent, so 6 months or 1 year, and you were due in this month, say July, then you are now due in this month, which could be October, November, December, I think is, if I remember right from the chart. But anybody that's due in October, they can take advantage of the 42 days if they want to, because the thought behind that is that the fitness center would hopefully be open by then, and folks would get a chance to kind of get back into a more normal routine. There was another paragraph in that talked about using these next 3 or 4 months as commanders to figure out how we're going to do a socially distanced compliant PT test. So the FSS has got that for work.
They do.
And they're going to first brief us and the mission partners probably toward the end of June, and kind of lay out what that looks like. Because I'm not quite sure what it looks like. They waived abdominal circumference until October of 21. That was part of the guidance. They've made some exceptions to height and weight. So even if we were to start PT testing in October of 20, it's going to be a 3-component test, and I'm not sure what it looks like. One of the things that was in the guidance was talking about sit-up bars, so you don't have to hold somebody's feet when you do sit-ups, so you're not breathing at a high rate into somebody else's space. But I also, I'm not too smart, but I'm trying to figure out how you do the run and
not pass somebody.
So you can maybe do it one at a time. Kelly said, well, you could do staggered starts, but then you'd have to have somebody timing for, I don't know. So I'm going to give it over to the people that do know and see if they can come up with a way to pull that off. Yeah. Realistically, does it start here in October? I don't know. So they certainly gave local commanders that discretion. If the conditions don't allow, then I have the discretion to delay that until a more appropriate time. But that is way out there, and I just am not sure what October is going to look like here. So in general, that's where we're at on PT testing. So your June folks that thought they were going to have to test on June 1st, which nobody has to test on the 1st of the month, right? Because we do it by month. That's certainly not going to come to fruition like we thought. The other paragraph in that guidance says it doesn't mean you aren't expected to maintain Air Force standards.
Exactly.
So, this has been a tough. It's been a tough couple of months, but encourage people to again find that fitness routine, take advantage of some of the things FSS is doing with online classes. Just get out and go for the run, do the push-ups, do the sit-ups, and maintain some level of fitness that's appropriate to our profession of arms.
That's it. I see more people outside running than I think I've ever had. So I think they're actually most people are taking it upon themselves. There's still the people that haven't made it all the way through Netflix yet, but as soon as they're done, getting to the bottom of Netflix, win sprints.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
All right, what do we got here? I had another question here from the Facebook land. When can families come to base to visit? I think that's what it said.
They've never not been allowed.
They've never not been allowed?
Nope.
Yep.
Nope. So the base never closed.
Right.
We never stopped allowing visitors onto the base. We've relied on common sense.
Right.
And I would encourage everybody to continue to use common sense. So, the general guidelines are if you're going to have folks to your house, family members or whatever, and that number gets past 10, then probably need to be rethinking that plan. Right. Because we still got guidance at the state level and the local level that limit those gatherings to 10. And that was probably a challenge over the weekend, actually, for some folks. And then, I would encourage folks, if they're going to have family come to visit, that they're taking the appropriate, precautions that the CDC has outlined.
Right.
Make sure that mom and dad haven't been running fevers, and make sure that, they haven't been exposed to someone, in the last couple of weeks that they're aware of. And then, you might have to make mom and dad wear a mask in your house, and it might be a little awkward conversation. But it's all common sense. We've never turned the spigot off on families visiting the base.
Unless it's a daughter-in-law that told you, and then that's not on us.
Here's the other part of that. So I'm going to ask folks at some point to start coming back to work more so than they are now, even though a lot of the 11th Wing folks are working every day. But as organizations across the base do that, I'm going to have a lot of parents that need a child care solution. And I have a suspicion that grandma and grandpa might be part of that plan.
Right.
So there's no scenario I can see where I'm going to not let those folks onto the base if I'm asking more of the members as they kind of work through all their child care issues. So pretty wide latitude on that. But again, so far we've relied on common sense. so far it's worked okay. And that's a credit to the community that we are. I would like to continue along that track as long as conditions allow us, and so far they have.
Yeah. So I have another question.
Okay.
Hopefully it's not too hard for you, but they said, do we have any ETA for base housing opening the community pool and gyms?
I don't. That's a great question.
It is.
Yeah. And so it's kind of like,
no softballs out there in Facebook land. Yeah.
I tell you, so we were asked a couple of weeks ago about the playgrounds.
Right.
And we engaged with Liberty Park and deferred to them on the playgrounds. So there's nothing at the installation level that prevents, from me as the installation commander, that prevents them from opening playgrounds as they see fit. And that would hold true for at least the pool. The gym, I might have a little more of a say on.
Right.
But I've seen some pools open up. The CDC put out guidance that there's essentially zero risk of transmission in the pool, but you still would have to limit the number of folks that are in the facility.
Right.
So if Liberty Park, can come to me with a plan to open, I'm certainly not opposed to opening the pool up for our housing residents.
Yeah.
So.
Definitely have to be.
Yeah, it's all going to look different.
Yeah.
They're going to have to. I would think they'd have to pull some of the deck chairs, and they might have to actively monitor how many folks are in the space at the same time. And I don't know that it'll happen today or tomorrow, but it can certainly happen. I don't think the pool's not going to open this summer. It will look very different, but I don't think it's not going to open unless Liberty Park has guidance. At a corporate level that I'm not aware of.
Right. I've noticed during all this, there has been a very high importance on the individual monitoring themselves.
Yeah.
Right, to make sure that they're maintaining, and for the most part, as we walk through the BX, the commissary, and other areas, people have been doing a good job. There's the onesie-twosie that we tend to focus on that gets too close, but overall, I'm pretty proud of that. Each individual is taking individual responsibility to maintain social distancing from their neighbor.
And we have an advantage on base because we have, we generally have a population that's okay with following orders.
Yeah.
So we get to cheat a little bit, where the struggle out in the general public is a little bit different, right? And so, I was when I go to the BX Saturday morning. I think it was Saturday morning. I was in there with Emma and Kelly, and I saw two young men, didn't have masks on, and before I could say something, an older gentleman walked by him and go, I think he said something along the lines of, "No mask, huh?"
Yeah.
And
passive aggressive.
And then very passive aggressively, which I loved. Yeah. And then he said, one of the young men responded, "Oh, I don't have it with me," and he kind of got the, okay.
Disappointed.
And they left.
Yeah.
They once they were identified and kind of a little publicly shamed, they headed for the exits. So apparently they didn't see the giant sign that it's required.
They probably also saw you in the other corner.
No, I lurk, so people tend not to see me.
Yeah. Wear the cowboy hat low.
Yeah.
All right. Here's one of our favorite questions, and we did talk about last week. Does the golf course include outdoor rec?
No.
No. The answer is no.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. Nope.
Yeah. Pass.
So, the golf course is one that I would. It's definitely on my short list of things I want to open.
Right.
I'm worried about the viability of it over the long term, so when I gave the green light on outdoor rec, the conversation I had with the FSS was, let's look at the golf course in a couple of weeks. So let's see if we can get, a nice trend of, it's the ghost.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. A nice trend of, 21 days or so.
Right.
And then, we'll see if we can open the golf course.
Yeah. I like it.
Yeah.
Trends. Let's see, we have a Sergeant Anchundi asks, any word on WAPS testing? We addressed this last week.
Yeah.
But
what did we say last week?
We said that FSS is working it. They were looking at the Smart Center and other venues to start testing as they look at the social distancing and how to do it all, but they are planning on opening up WAPS testing soon.
Yep. Okay.
There you go. Oh, they don't. 1 second here. Someone else answered a question. Sharon answered a question for us.
Yeah.
Let's see, the pool's been closed. Different pool. Liberty Park has a separate pool.
Yep.
So thanks for answering that question. But the question was for the Liberty Park pool.
Yep.
Will masks be provided for personnel when they come back to work? I read it earlier, so I'm paraphrasing.
Anybody that's directed to come back to work or wants to come back to work, we have masks available. You have to work that kind of through your respective office or unit, but we have plenty of masks in supply for anybody that is directed to come back to work.
Yep.
Who doesn't have a mask right now? I mean, Old Navy's selling them for, I don't know, 50 cents a piece or something I saw over the weekend.
Old Navy.
So, I mean, that doesn't negate my responsibility to issue masks if I'm going to require them, so I'm good with that. But I'm always a little surprised at that question.
All right. The questions have slowed down on Facebook. Going to our pending questions. Family. Is the Airmen's Attic still taking donations?
I don't believe they are.
No, they are not.
Yeah.
We don't want to donate a possibly contaminated item for someone else to pick up. But it's not open.
Huge hats off to them they've been handing out food.
Yes.
I don't know if you've noticed that, but so on Fridays, I think it's mostly been on Fridays.
Yes.
I'm not up on the details. They've done that all on their own, but wow, huge kudos to that group for kind of adapting to the situation and providing some benefit to the community when they can't operate normally. I've been absolutely impressed with that, so I really appreciate that.
They're motivated to take care of the family, not just by redistributing, but actually going after it.
No, it's been wonderful.
Will the chapel be doing more events like the drive-in, which was a big success?
Yeah, it was.
You said last week it was a success. There you go. Yeah. Do you know if they will be?
I know they want to. I
haven't heard.
And I know AFES wants to partner with them to maybe do a little bit more. So yes, as this continues on, I'm sure we'll do more events like that.
Perfect. Does anyone know how to contact Medical Group during COVID, or have an email address for medical EFMP office? It's kind of broken up here a little bit. How to contact the medical group for COVID testing, and do we have access to the EFMP office?
So
we do normal phone numbers, right?
Yeah, that should all be working. Yeah. But for the COVID testing, the first step is to call the nurses line,
right,
and start there, and then
public health, right?
If you're a beneficiary, and you're concerned that you might have COVID, the first thing we want you to do is call that nurses line. Don't come in, right necessarily. But call the nurses line, talk to them, and then if they think you need the test, they'll direct you either to Malcolm Grow or to a testing location.
And then after, it's different.
Oh, EFMP, they've been working, so I don't
think they took a break.
No, I don't. I'm not sure why there would be trouble. I'd have to get into the details of that.
All right. I wish I could provide filler here. Oh no, see, now that there's not a lot of cars and traffic flow on base, will they be focusing any effort on fixing the potholes?
Oh, come on. We fix a lot of potholes
going out the front gate.
That pothole's been fixed 12 times in my 2 years here. So they'll fix it again.
That's Mother Nature.
So
she doesn't like that outbound lane.
Hey, so here's the deal with the outbound lane.
Yeah.
So the structure underneath it, we know that's fake. Yeah. And we know that it's on swampy ground. Yeah. So they'll go out and they'll fix it, and they've done that again a dozen times since I've been here. But the reality is, what we'd like to do is essentially rebuild that. Right. If I rebuild that, I'm going to have to close it. Right. And so that's our trade-off. So I'm with you. I know that the evil pothole shows up from time to time. Yep. But we'll get out there. We'll get it fixed. And we would really like that longer-term thing. But that's a huge impact to the community, and it's not cheap to go in there and rebuild it. So CE's been all over that. It's only in one lane, right?
Go slower. You're supposed to be going 25 miles an hour
It's only
anyway.
in the left lane. I mean, the anti-pothole folks can get in the right lane.
That's right.
Right?
Crush. Yep.
Okay. All right. Hey, I think they got out and they did fix around the base lake, or they're in the process of doing that.
They did. So
That
I
was
was
a question a couple of weeks ago. Yeah.
So I took the family out on our bike riding adventure through the golf course that will eventually end, and I noticed that the playground down there where my kids go fishing is gone.
Yeah.
And I was like,
yeah.
What?
Because it was broke.
It was broke.
Not safe.
It was not safe.
Couldn't fix it. Gone.
So they're out there working, is I guess the point there. So Dan Eastland, he used to be here. He's watching. He's at a different base, so he's still snooping on us.
Yeah.
Let's see. Good morning. When do we expect to open the? This is when? The barbershop. We addressed it earlier. Rewind after the episode is over. All right, that's all I got on Facebook land. So if anybody has any questions, please go now. I'm at the end of the list. And that's a wrap on the questions that I have.
Okay. Well, that's all right.
Yeah?
Because overall, not a lot has changed.
Right.
And I think, it's been interesting as we've gone through this. The information is flat. I keep talking about how the information is flat. So
and fluid.
When I find out about something, everybody else in the world is finding out about it at the same time. So we all kind of had to go through this together. One thing I did want to touch on, though, that kind of cropped up over the weekend is if you might be familiar that the Centers for Disease Control kind of changed their guidance on surface transmission last week. They put out kind of refined guidance on whether or not this transmits across surfaces. And they, in my mind, and some folks might disagree, but they walked a lot of their initial guidance back as far as kind of high traffic areas and the susceptibility to, if you're here in the office and I had COVID-19, how long does it stay on, the desk and the furniture? And I thought that was interesting, one, because it directly impacts our ability to bring folks back to work.
Right.
And, we are going down the road of what that looks like when you talk about, some earlier guidance that talked about multiple times a day disinfecting high traffic areas and things like that. Well, we can do some of that, but at a significant cost. And so it caught my eye that the CDC changed some of the guidance last week and walked a little bit of that surface guidance back. And it kind of highlighted two things to me, and this is what I wanted to just share my thoughts on. One is you have this desire for consistency of message, because that's how we're designed, and we want to hear kind of consistent things. We take safety in that, and security in that, but you have an evolving situation. And so the science evolves, and as we understand the virus better, how we mitigate that is going to change over time. So I think not just at Joint Base Andrews, it's very difficult to do things like the CDC did and walk that guidance back a little bit, because for 2 months they've been saying, here's what you should be doing.
Right.
But it's all based on best data at the time. And then I read a couple articles about how fast things are getting peer reviewed, in the scientific community, and how fast how fast we're trying to turn some of this information. So if you're a receiver of that information, it seems like things are changing all the time. But it's just kind of the natural evolution of a scientific problem. And it goes all the way down to things like, should we open the playgrounds? Because my answer on playgrounds is very much rooted on Centers for Disease Control guidance.
Right.
So when this started 2 months ago and we knocked off playgrounds, well, I could tell you that's because there was a sense that this was easily transmittable
through hard surfaces for 10 days
over time.
Yeah.
Now fast forward to now, and it turns out that the science has shown that's probably not necessarily true. So now we can adjust our posture a little bit based on that. So I just we're creatures of habit, and when we kind of get these changes, it almost generates questions. I think it can generate fear. But to me, it's just part of the process. So we make the best decisions with the best information possible at the time that we have to make the decision, and then we reevaluate and adjust from there. And I think we're seeing that play out, not just here at Joint Base Andrews, but across the across the country.
When you make the hypothesis early on in any problem, and then other people challenge it, and then you change the outcome. Yeah.
And I think
part of the nature.
The jury is completely in on the face masks. It's clear that it's a water droplet, a droplet spread virus primarily. And it's clear that the face masks prevent transmission especially if you're asymptomatic and you're walking around and you don't know you have it. That is clear. And if you remember, we didn't start there.
Yeah.
And so, right, there's all this kind of updated guidance and evolution and changes. So, we'll see what happens in the next week. All right, Chief.
Are you gonna remain malleable when it changes again next week, sir?
I'm pretty bendy. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Pretty bendy.
Yes.
So, all right.
That's it.
Okay.
That's
all right. Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Hope we got some questions answered.
Yep.
You can continue to post them, and we'll try to get after them. I'll take a look at them. Yep. Either through PA channels or through Facebook Live a week from today.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.